And so I'm glad that you've been following the podcast and that you have agreed to be a guest on the Prison to Promise podcast. It's a pleasure for me to introduce um, you to our readers, Mr. Barry Diamond. Um, Tell me, I know you said you've been following it. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? Clearly, you have some positive thoughts, or else you wouldn't have agreed to be interviewed on the podcast. But I'd like to hear more.
Well, I think it's important what you're doing because you're bringing people on that have experienced the jail part of their life and have come out and have made a decision to change their life. In other words, all of us that have come out really understand that there's a problem out there, and you can either sink below the mud and just go, oh, life is terrible and I'll never be anybody, or you can do something about it.
Yes,
So the people that are coming on are people that have done something about their life, and it occurred prior to them coming out, where they made some kind of a decision that they were going to make a difference.
yes,
And so the thinking while in jail and the thinking when you come out is so very, very important to make that adjustment
mhm,
to reentry.
yes, indeed. And you represent one of these people that you're talking about. You know,
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm one of those poster child, I guess.
yes,
People that made a choice,
yeah,
and the difference, I think, in what we're doing and maybe others, is that the choice that I made was not for myself,
hmm,
but rather by changing myself and doing things, we created a program that people can follow
yeah,
that teaches them to do what I did.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's kind of like a blueprint and a roadmap
yeah.
for what is possible and how do you do what you want to do. It's not easy.
Not at all. Not at all. And so, Barry, if before we get too far ahead, if you would introduce yourself, let people know who you are, perhaps how much time you did, how long you've been out, and then talk a little bit about the program that we were talking about just now.
Yeah, sure. I think it's very important that people tell about their background. Who are they? What did they do before? What are they doing now? My name is Barry Diamond. I'm currently the executive director of a program called the Pride International Entrepreneurship Program. And what it basically does is it teaches people that are incarcerated or have come out how to go into business. And
Mm,
I'll speak to about that part in a little while. But my background is interesting. For 27 years, I started my own financial business consulting company. I taught companies how to run better.
mhm.
My background, I was the president elect of the Better Business Bureau in my state. I was on the town council, vice president of the Ways and Means, the zoning. I sound like I'm one of those guys that is up for election. But I
Absolutely.
had an awful lot to do and got very involved in my town.
Mhm.
I was on the town library, in the commission. I started the Chamber of Commerce in my town and was its first president. And I always say, by the way, did I mention that I went to prison for a couple of years? And the reason why I do that is um, in our course, we teach people that nobody knows you've been to prison unless you tell them.
Right.
So, and there are ways that you tell them that I'll
Mhm.
talk about in a minute. But what's interesting is with a really nice background like that, why in the world would I do something wrong? I
Right.
don't know. Pressure, stupid decisions,
Mhm.
things that happen in my life that caused me to think differently than I normally did.
Hmm.
and I went to prison. My sentence was 6 years prison and 6 years probation. But I was one of those people that was able to luckily get out because of good behavior and things that were happening. They were trying to get people out of the prison that shouldn't have been there, or they felt were better off coming out.
Hmm.
And so I actually was able to get out after 2.5 years, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I really was a good boy when I was in prison, Craig.
And now you're a good boy still now.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a good boy. Thank you.
I
And
hear
so
you.
what happened is when I was in prison, um, I came across a group of people that really were people that I wasn't normally connected to because of the area that I lived in, my background, and my friends and relatives, and I discovered something really interesting. There were an awful lot of bright people in prison. I mean, really smart,
Yes,
and
indeed.
it occurred to me that other than going to prison, here I was, somebody that really succeeded, and they never succeeded, or very few of them ever succeeded prior to going in.
Hmm.
And it was just amazing to me because they were smart. I
Yeah.
mean, really, really smart.
Yeah. Let me tell
And
you,
and so
I tell people often, I'm the most smartest people I've ever met have been people behind the wall.
yeah, I was amazed. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just amazed, and I'm talking about street smart and life smart.
Yeah. And if
And
you get on
they
some
knew how to do
academics,
things. Their thinking was great. They're very good minds.
yeah.
And being inquisitive, I was thinking about, why the heck was a person like me able to be successful,
Hmm.
yet these people were not successful, yet
Hmm.
they're quite smart. And
Hmm.
so I started to realize that some of the big differences was that in my family, my father was in business. He was a sign painter.
Hmm.
And I have a brother, and the two of us really lived in a household where he was a business person. So I kind of got the feeling for what's a business person and what do you have to know. And so I had the opportunity of living in a household where I was, just because I lived there, was able to learn things that other people did not learn.
Hmm.
So it wasn't so much that I was smart, but I had an environment that taught me something. So,
Hey, let me say something here. And
sure,
I think that that's so important. Talking about the environment, the environment that you came up in, which was probably an environment where maybe you weren't super privileged, but you had some privileges and you had
well,
access to things.
absolute.
Whereas some of these other folks that you've run into, many of them came from backgrounds of depravity, so they didn't have access to a lot of the things that would promote success.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Why didn't they have that?
Hmm.
Was due to the environment that they came up in.
Hmm.
They were being taught other things and weren't allowed to see things that I had seen.
Mm.
So not so much that I was privileged, but I had what I would consider a normal middle class income
Hmm.
type of environment.
Right.
My mother was home. My mother worked. My father owned his own business. We had dinner at 6 o'clock as a family. We talked about things. And to me it was so normal. Doesn't everybody? And yet when I started to speak to people in prison, no, that was pretty high end.
Yeah.
And so I was starting to get a feeling for what is the difference, and how could I develop some kind of training program or a way of introducing to them an environment.
Mm.
So it wasn't so much that they didn't know or have the ability, but I had to get them into an environment where I would get them to get my environment that I received.
Hmm.
So I spent the greater part of my life being a note taker, and so I really had journals. I had all the things that would help me to formulate a program
Mm.
where I could do what I call bring them up to par, get
Yes.
them to a benchmark
Yeah.
where they were then ready to move forward.
Hmm.
And it's what makes it so interesting is that I was able to do it just by simply going back to my background and saying, okay, I know how to start a business. I know how to do teaching. I know what the elements. I just have to look at it and say, okay, what's missing
Hmm.
from my students'
Hmm.
background, and how do I make my students come up to par? As opposed to just teaching information.
Yeah.
So now I'd like to get a little bit to the program, which is like,
Yeah.
it's so different.
Talk about it.
A little bit information of how the program has been accepted is really important.
Hmm.
We've been accepted into the alternative sentencing support courts, both federal and state,
Hmm.
which means if you take the course, you can get time off your sentencing or actually not even go to prison because of this.
Wow.
So that's a big deal. Yeah, up to a
Absolutely.
year off your prison or not have to go at all. And so we have judges that have said, we want to make your program part of our court. And
Hmm.
so a couple of times a year, I go in, I introduce the program, and I accept the people.
Hmm.
And the judges allow them, if they graduate, to either not go to jail or they allow time off their prison. Yeah, so it's a real big deal.
Yeah.
We've been
Absolutely.
approved in 5 prisons in my state to
Hmm.
actually go in and take the people there ready to come out
Hmm.
and teach them. Recently, our course has become a University of Bridgeport campus course. So
Hmm.
they're actually teaching it at a campus level.
Hmm.
And I'm happy to say this guy that came out of prison, I am now one of the professors.
How about that, Professor
Yeah,
Barry?
yeah, really, really interesting. So they call me professor now, which I really think is funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're allowed to teach that on course.
Hmm.
We're in the we're by the way, we're celebrating our 10th year this year.
Oh wow.
So we've been doing it
Congratulations.
for 10 years. We have thousands of small companies that have been started by people that came out of prison.
Hmm.
Thousands of them that are being successfully
Who have
run.
gone through your training.
Yeah, that came through our training.
And what is
Now,
the
what
name of your
happens is
training?
our course prepares them
Hmm.
to go into the University of Bridgeport
Hmm.
and get an 18 credit course for free.
Oh wow.
They give them $1,000 after they complete the course and graduate, and
Hmm.
even help them pay for their LLC or getting registered.
Nice.
So this is really a big deal.
And what's the name of your program, Barry?
The program is called the Pride International Entrepreneurship Training
I
Program.
think you said that
It's
earlier.
PRIDE, and it stands for People Reentering into Doing Entrepreneurship.
Hmm. Hmm.
All right, it's an interesting thing. We also in the process of creating a second chance microloan company,
Hmm.
first one of its kind in the nation,
Hmm.
and it would only be for people that have criminal records and backgrounds. So you have to, yeah. This is one of those cases, Craig,
Yeah.
where if you didn't go to prison, you're not good enough for us. How's that?
That's
I
great
love it.
stuff. So tell
Yeah.
me this though, Barry, what made you want to do this program versus say just get out of prison and just wash your hands of the whole experience and the people that you met in prison and get back to your life?
Well, nobody's ever really asked that question. It really happened because I went into prison, and if you notice, I'm not of color.
No, you're kidding me.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that so that everyone realizes. And at least, unfortunately, 80% of the people that were in there with me were people of color, and
Black and
and
brown
so
people.
that was really wow.
Yeah.
Um, and I did have some problems,
Hmm.
and one of them because of my age and who I was, and that goody goody in the corner,
Yeah.
and so I had an opportunity to do some work while I was in the prison, and I was paired up with an old gentleman who happened to be of color,
Hmm.
and little known to me, he was one of the ringleaders there,
Uh-huh.
and I helped him in a way that was just accidentally. He had a bad leg, and they were going to transfer him to a prison that he didn't want to go to. And they came to me, and the counselor asked me if I would mind doing a little bit extra of the work that he couldn't do to keep him here because they liked him.
Yeah.
And I said, of course. He got the word back, and all of a sudden, everything changed in prison. Everyone was my friend. Uh, there was never a problem.
Yeah.
I had some problems getting in some religious book, which is another story. And he was instrumental. He in getting he was from Islamic community, and he was a Muslim, and he had the opportunity to speak to the imam,
Hmm.
who got me my Bible,
Hmm.
and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I met nice people that weren't like me, that were willing to go out of their way just because I was nice to them.
Yeah.
And when I came out, I thought, I lived through the experience. I wasn't harmed. I was okay and
Hmm.
safe.
Hmm.
And it was because of people in there that helped me,
Hmm.
and they need something that I have. They
Hmm.
gave me what they had, protection,
Hmm.
and their humility and honesty and integrity, and I could give them something, and that something was I could educate them
Hmm.
because of my background to be as good or better than and more successful than I was.
Yeah.
And so it really was a payback
Mm.
for the experience that I had, and
Mm.
I felt that it was necessary for me to give what I could give because they gave me what they could give.
That's dope, man. And relationships are like that. They're reciprocal. You know, you give me
Absolutely.
something, I give you something, and we continue to give back and forth, and we continue to flourish in a
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
All of us need to do what we can to
Hmm.
help this community.
Absolutely.
You're asking me to be on was an expression of, because we met before,
Right.
that you honored what I was doing and felt that it could
Absolutely.
help the people that you're trying to help.
Absolutely, Barry. And so,
Yeah.
listening to your story and listening to how you detail your program, um, excuse me, and your experiences, what would you say to someone who's incarcerated right now who may not have access to your program? What would be some advice or some direction you'd give them for success post incarceration?
Well, it's really interesting. We not only have in Connecticut, where we're our home base, but if you noticed, I said it's now called Pride International.
Yeah.
If you remember, it used to be called Pride.
Right.
Now it's Pride International. We just recently brought our training programs into Africa,
Yes.
and we are in Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, and
Wow.
we have Zoom classes in the United States and foreign countries.
Hmm.
So if somebody is not here for a classroom,
Hmm.
they can join us on Zoom.
Right. But how about, say, the guys who are in prison in some of the states where your program isn't? What would be some advice or some insight that you would share with them for their success?
Sure. Um, One of the things, I mean, there's several ideas. I would first let them understand that they can do it.
Hmm.
That there are many people in every state, like yourself and myself,
Hmm.
in their own state, that are working to help them get where they want to go.
Hmm.
That it isn't the world that's no longer shunning us,
Hmm.
and there's enough people out there
Yeah.
that what you need to do is come back to your community and look for those organizations that are working with reentry.
Hmm.
Um, in many cases, it starts with your church.
Mm.
Okay, as an example, the first thing I did was when I came out, I went to my place of worship
Hmm.
and asked, our religious leaders,
Hmm.
I want to get connected to people that are working with people that have a criminal record and just came out.
Yeah.
And I was given the name of a few people. I contacted them. The first thing that happened is I went to a meeting.
Hmm.
Somebody said to me, "You have a great idea for a program. We'll give you staff, we'll help you, we'll give you a place to run your program, and we'll support you."
Nice.
I just came out. So, is it possible? Sure.
Hmm.
Open your mouth, tell people what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
You need to set a program, a plan of action.
Yeah.
The first thing you need to do is put to paper and pen.
Mm.
What is it you want to do?
Mm.
Why do you want to do it?
Oh,
What is
great
the
question.
importance of you succeeding?
Mm.
Those are the first things we ask our students. Why the heck are you here? This is not going to be easy. Why do you want to do it?
Hmm.
If you don't succeed, what's going to happen?
Hmm.
If you do succeed, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So, and every person has to start talking to themselves
Yeah, man.
and finding out, who are you?
Mm.
What is it that you want to do in
Mm.
this life?
Yeah.
And then, how do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to learn something. We
Mm.
talk about the journey is what teaches you,
That's right.
not the destination.
That's right.
So starting doing things wrong teach you what things you need to do right.
Sir.
And the reason why I say you can do it is all of us have within us capacities.
Hmm.
We don't trust ourselves enough
Mm.
to realize how much capacity we really have.
Yeah. Come on.
What can we really do? Here's the best way to think of it. If you ask the average student that comes to my class to talk about themselves, they'll talk about they don't have very much. There's not much they can offer others because, they don't have money, they don't have ideas. That it goes on and on and on. So then I ask them, walk down your street in your own community. Have you seen somebody who needs a pair of shoes and you have an extra pair of shoes? By the way, you have something golden that they'll never have that you can give them.
Mm.
If somebody is wandering around and doesn't know what to do or how to solve a problem, is unhappy, and you can speak to them for a few minutes and set them on the right track,
Hmm.
you've given them something that you have that is so valuable that they look to you and say, "Wow, you're terrific." And yet you say to yourself, "I'm nobody."
Mm.
The truth is, we are the problem, not what's happening.
Yeah.
What's happening out there is a response to what we show them and
Mm.
what they think we are thinking.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
life is really a thinking experience. Going into business and being successful is a thinking experience. You get there by thinking right.
Mm.
Hard work will
Yeah.
get you what you want a
Mm.
lot more than brains and lots of opportunity.
Yeah. Hard
You
work,
need to
thinking.
work hard because working hard finds the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Man, Barry, you're hitting it. You dropped a ton, bruh. You dropped an entire ton, and that's the meat I was really looking for. That stuff that our listeners can take and ingest and find their own truth with. And I think what you just shared in this segment gives it pulls the curtain off what folks need to do, because the answers are inside of us. The potential is inside.
Always,
Yeah.
always. Before we start our course, which is 12 weeks, 2 hours a week, the first thing we do in the first two sessions, which is 4 hours, we don't teach them a thing. All we do is try to ground them. We ask them to think about who they are.
Yeah.
What are the skills they have? Why do they want to do things? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your dreams before you were incarcerated. What did you always want to be when you grew up?
Yeah.
We spend 4 hours talking about non-business data. And the difference between our course and any other course in the United States that's being taught is that we are 60% non-business. We are 60% self-actuation, looking at yourself, getting you to think. Because the thing that we discovered is most people coming out of prison aren't ready to learn anything, Craig. Now, most companies that are training, any training, they take the person that comes out of prison and say, okay, they need to learn something. Well, guess what? If they're not ready to learn, it doesn't matter what you want to teach them. They're not ready.
Right.
That student has to say to themselves, I'm ready. I want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. It's important. If I don't do it, this is what happens. If I do it, this is what they have to say to themselves. So it's very important to train a student first to start learning. Why does a person not be ready for learning when they come out? I want you to think about everybody that's in prison right now. Now, you and I went through it.
Yeah.
But we may not have thought about it. I gave some thought to it. We went through years of being in prison with no thought process. We're told when to get up, when to go to the bathroom, when to take our drugs, when to go back to our cell, when to go to food. There is no decision making. Well, I want you to take a person for years that's not allowed to make any decisions. You bring them out, and day one, you bring them into a class and say, okay, start learning.
Yeah, make decisions. Planning.
How do I even think?
Right. So you ground them.
We ground them. We teach them how to think again.
Yeah.
Now,
that's so important.
We have a board of advisors.
And let me just say this real quick.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful what you just said. Teaching people how to think, not what to think, but how to think, how to create their own realities.
Yep. Perfect. You brought up something. We're the only company that teaches people how to go into business, and we don't require that you have a business that you want to go into first. Everyone else says we won't accept you unless you come in with a business idea.
Right.
Well, what's interesting is we don't want you to have a business idea. It's okay. You know why? If we do the right job getting you thinking properly, not what to think, but how to think, you are going to develop a business idea while you're in the course.
That's powerful.
And that's what happens. Yeah. People come in and say, hey, I don't have a good business idea. We don't want you to have one. Yeah. How can you have a good business idea if you don't even know what a business is?
Right. And if you don't know who you are and what you want, you know, makes me think of the quote that's attributed to Rene Descartes that says, I think, therefore I am. The essence of who I am is my capacity to think.
Yes, that's the reason why we teach you how to think, not what to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each person is within themselves, self-contained, has the energy, the brain power, and the ability to do what they want to do. Notice what they want to do, not what I want them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we help direct them towards thinking correctly and actually getting it so that a good idea can be taken from them and show them how to go into business.
And
I'll
manifest.
give you an idea of what we do. One of the things at training, we ask them, if you had all the money in the world and can buy and spend anything, what would you want to get up every day and do?
Mm.
And then they start telling us, and we write it down. So let me ask you, Craig, if you had all the money in the world, you didn't have to work, what would you do every morning because you'd love to do it?
That's a great question. It's a golden question. And I think one of the things would be is I try to travel frequently as possible, and help other people find destinations to travel to.
Okay, so as an example, we would take that in our notes, and I would say, somewhere along the line, is there a way that we can help you get into a business that would be a travel type of business
Mhm.
where you could do travel things and help other people do travel things, and
Mhm.
you'd love doing it?
Mhm. And that's the thing. I think it's important to love to do the work that you're doing.
Yes, you can't do it for money. You have to do it because you'd love to do it. So we
Passion.
get several ideas. And from that, we start to steer the person into thinking about how can you make your love of something that you always want to do
Mhm.
into a business.
Right. So
The
that you
best person that we ever did that to, the star, was the first class I ever had 10 years ago, where the guy went into business as a memorabilia guy. He bought and sold memorabilia.
Mhm.
And it was just things that he found that other people would love to buy.
Mhm.
Okay. He never sold anything in his life. Go forward 1 year, he did 800,000 in sales and made $240,000 in profits.
Wow. That's really great. That's
And
exciting.
why? Because he loved doing it.
Right. Right. And so he was in his glory every time he engaged.
He loved it. He
Yeah.
loved it. He didn't even know how much money he was making. He was so happy. Now,
I just
that's
feel
the
a passion.
idea of
Yeah.
our program.
Yeah.
As an example, the course teaches you banking, law, insurance, accounting, marketing, sales. There's a business plan,
Mhm.
positive mental attitude, and more. We teach people how to be social, business social.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's really interesting. Business people that have been in prison are probably my greatest students ever.
Mhm.
Let me tell you why. The first thing I do when I have a class,
Mhm.
I say to everybody, okay, you don't have to raise your hand, but shake your head if any of you ever sold drugs. And I go like this, and the whole class is shaking, the room starts rocking.
Right, right,
Okay.
right, right.
And then I tell everybody, does everybody realize you've all been in business?
That's
You
right.
already were all business people.
That's
Think
right.
about it.
That's right.
You
Some were
know
born
how to
successful, some
advertise,
left.
you know how to break down a product,
Mhm.
market it, you know how to do client relations.
You have
You
all the skills
know,
you need.
you have all the skills for being a business person.
So let's just refine them.
I only want you to realize and think about this. I want you to change your product or service so you don't go back to jail.
Right.
Other than that, I still want you to be a hustler.
That's right, because it's all about hustling, right? I think there's a rapper, I think maybe Rick Ross, and his song has a hook and it says, "Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling." But Barry, look, we're down to about 5 minutes left in our time together.
Okay.
It's been great talking to you. It's been great, um, just feeling your energy. absorbing some of your wisdom and insight. But two things I want to ask you before our time runs up. And
Yeah.
one is, if you were to entitle your journey from, I don't know, the beginning of your life to right now, or from the time you were in prison to right now, what would you entitle it? What would be the
Joy.
joy? Why joy?
I have been, because of going to prison and because of doing what I'm doing, I am able to help thousands and thousands of people do something that they've always wanted to do, but didn't know how to do.
Mm,
I mean, I wake up every morning happy.
nice. That's dope, Barry. And then lastly, if people wanted to reach you to learn more about your program or to become a student of Pride International, how can they do that?
Well, the Pride Program at gmail.com. One word, the Pride Program at gmail.com.
Right.
By the way, one comment. People think they're too old. You know, they've been out of the system age wise. They've been 20 years in prison. They're too old to start.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that I am 83 years old.
Right on.
Okay.
83 years young.
And I am looking forward for the second half of my life to come.
Right on, Barry. Come on, man. That's
It's
great.
never too late. It's never too late.
Never.
Prison background, age, sex. It doesn't matter what you've been in prison for. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. You got to keep going until the wheels fall off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You
There
can't
is a
stop.
lot out there for everyone.
That's
You
right.
deserve the right to get it.
That's right. That's right.
And whenever you do something, you are helping your family.
Mm,
Break the cycle.
mm.
There are people around you in your family that see that you went to jail. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it by becoming a role model to your own kids and your own family and your own friends in your neighborhood
That's right. I was going to say, in your community. You're
and your
right.
community.
Yeah. And so, Barry, man, yo, I'm going to say it again, because we're just about at the end and I don't want us to be cut off. But it's been great.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you for your time.
It's a